Ani, bonsoir, and good evening to and welcome everyone to our regular council meeting, and welcome to the members of the audience. It's nice to see actual people here instead of, we don't see you when you're virtual. So, but it's nice to see people in actual person. As we normally do, the first meeting of the month is usually the chair is given to the deputy mayor so that she can chair it. So without further ado, I'm going to turn it over to you.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. So I'd like to start with the Indigenous land acknowledgement. I'd like to begin the meeting by acknowledging that we are in the traditional territory of the Anishinaabe peoples in the Robinson Huron Treaty area and wish to recognize the neighboring community of Doki's First Nation. While we meet today, I would like to take a moment to acknowledge the importance of the lands which we call home. We do this to reaffirm our commitment and responsibility in improving relationships between nations and to improving our own understanding of local Indigenous peoples and their cultures. From coast to coast to coast, we acknowledge the ancestral and unceded territory of all the Inuit, Métis, and First Nation people that call this land home. So with that, I will need a mover and a seconder for the adoption of the agenda. Dave and Roger. Do we have any disclosures of, do you have the motion to read or?
Duly moved and seconded, but resolved that the agenda be adopted as presented.
All in favor? Okay, good. Disclosure of pecuniary interests? None. We have no delegations tonight. So we'll go on to 6.1, which is reports and items for consideration, general government. 6.1.1. We have a resolution to authorize a letter of engagement with Descon Construction Ltd for the development of a multi-residential senior housing from meeting June 21st, 2023. So I need a mover and a seconder to open. Bob and Roger. And I will let Mark speak to this.
As you see within the letter of engagement, sort of outlines the initial part of the project in terms of them being responsible to examine the preliminary feasibility of the project, the viability and sustainability, and do the research and identify and provide formal proposals. There's also clauses in there at the point where council, even though if the project is feasible to proceed, council still has an opportunity not to proceed, but the only thing the developers request is that we do not have discussions or withhold entertaining any other further development within 2 years of this contract. Other than that, it sort of identifies the planner, the financial person, and the developer in moving forward to the next stages, and also ensuring that there'll be significant financial investment at the beginning of the project at their cost for design and proposals at that point, that the building and or project will remain in the ownership of the municipality through the non-for-profit organization. So all of those little clauses are pretty well in place. Should council decide to move forward with the project, then we will need to enter into a binding development agreement at that point for the formal construction and development of the project. And that all decisions will be made through council.
Okay, does anybody have any questions for Mark? Councillor Bob?
Thank you, Madam Chair. A question to you and refresh my memory, Mark, if once their study is done and the time length, like what's the next step? I know they will be meeting with us in this, but what's the time frame also?
If I recall from their presentation last year, they're looking within the next 12 to 18 months if everything moves forward accordingly in the necessary timeframes. But the initial assessment also takes in consideration any potential planning rezoning issues. And once they have more of that information, I think those questions can be best answered when they come back with the results of their initial findings.
Okay, and that was partly my question. When are they coming back at summer's end?
I would either summer's end or early fall.
Okay, thank you.
And they're actually awaiting council's decision this evening and ready to hit the ground running with the initial consultation and assessments starting tomorrow.
Does anybody else have any questions for Mark? Seeing none, I think Melanie has a resolution.
Yes, so the motion was moved and seconded, whereas the Descon team had responded to an expression of interest for the development for affordable senior housing project. And whereas the proponent presented their proposal at the meeting held June 21st, now therefore be it resolved that council authorizes a letter of engagement with Descon Construction Limited for the development of a multi-residential senior housing.
All in favor? Okay, we'll continue on to 6.1.2. We have a resolution to authorize a consulting agreement for capital project management with Rabaya Martin. So I need a mover and a seconder. Counselor Roger and Counselor Bob. And Mark will speak to this again, I believe.
Yeah, fairly quick. As part of our reorganization plan that was presented to council back in April, if I recall. Part of it was to enter into a consulting agreement with Rabaya Martin in order to continue working on some of our major capital projects to keep some viable consistency. The contract pretty well works on an hourly basis to be submitted on a monthly basis with a maximum of 15 to 20 hours per month as required. It's for a duration of 2 years, but can be terminated at any point in time that we find fit from both parties. And this should provide us with the consistency required, for example, with the renovations that are underway at the ACC Center. And then we have other major capital projects that are coming to fruition as well.
Does anybody have any questions for Mark? Okay, seeing none.
So motion was duly moved and seconded. Be it resolved that council authorizes a consulting agreement for capital project management with Rabaya Martin.
All in favor? So just to notify, it's just to let you guys know, Robert Martin was our head of operations and he retired. So, but there's still a lot of big projects going on. So that's why he's agreed to stay on till those projects are completed. So 6.2 finances, none. 6.3 public works and environmental services, none. 6.4 recreation and community services, none. 6.5 emergency and protection services, none. 6.6 building and planning development. 6.6.1, we have an update on the status of the implementation of the travel trailer bylaw license. And Kevin has a report for us.
Thank you. Through you, Madam Chair. Just to give everyone a bit of a background, because we haven't talked about this in a while. The travel trailer license bylaw was passed in 2021, along with the required zoning amendment. Due to an ongoing appeal to the zoning and recent withdrawal, the license bylaw could not be implemented until now. Starting on July 15th, 2023, the bylaw department will start to educate through social media, tax bill notices, and in-person visits on properties within the municipality using travel trailers on the new travel trailer license bylaw. This education period will give an opportunity for residents to educate themselves on the new regulations pertaining to the use of travel trailers within our municipality and make any modifications they may need to be in compliance. The education portion will end July 15th, 2024, and enforcement under this bylaw will take effect then. Starting January 30th, 2024, the licensing portion will be available at the municipal office. So this is just giving anybody that is using travel trailers the opportunity to make any make any modifications they need with sufficient time. So that way they have a year to do so.
Okay, do we have any questions for Kevin? Mayor Hajjo?
Just a comment, I'm glad to see it finally being put in place after a couple of years and abeyance because of the appeal. So now it's going to be a big job just to put it into place. So good luck.
Anybody else? Okay, seeing none. Yeah, the education part will start. So thank you, Kevin. So we have 6.6.2 short-term rental bylaw. Andrea will speak to this, and I believe I'll let you speak before we get a mover and a seconder for the resolutions.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Okay, just in time for travel trailers to be finished, let's start short-term rentals. This is the presentation of the draft bylaw for short-term rentals for the licensing portion, and also suggestion for the application for the zoning bylaw amendment that's going to be going to the Sudbury East Planning Board. Because our current zoning bylaw from 2014 doesn't speak to short-term rentals, we need to add a definition and some provisions. So the first part of this report and the analysis talks about that zoning bylaw amendment. So this is the application the municipality will have to make to the planning board. So I put emphasis on the definition of the short-term rental, and I wanted to break up why it was such a long and a bit of a run-on definition, but that each portion had a very important piece of what I think needed to be included and what staff felt needed to be included to make sure that we're capturing what will be asked for short-term rentals and being clear what will be allowed and for how long. So the page 2 of 5 of my report breaks down the fact that the legal occupancy used to provide sleeping accommodation. Using that word legal is very important, because if the structure was built illegally because it was built without permits, or it wasn't allowed because of the zoning bylaw, or isn't necessarily allowed because it doesn't have correct septic capacity, the term legal will force our department to review all aspects of a property before they would be allowed to be rented out, including all of our applicable law. Being located in a building structure or any part thereof in a dwelling unit or outside of a dwelling unit, that points to the fact that we expect some people to apply for sleep cabins to be used as short-term rentals. From an enforcement perspective, we see this as something that would work well in the municipality, because most likely it would be as part of a property that maybe already has someone living on the property and just wants to rent out the sleep cabin as a portion of their property. Or if the sleep cabin fits within the overall occupancy of a property, we could include a sleep cabin and not try to force people to remove buildings that are legally allowed to be there. The fact that we describe what a rental is. So basically it can be a verbal agreement as well as a written agreement to cover the fact that this is what would be considered a short-term rental. Up to 30 consecutive days and not affected by the Residential Tenancies Act. Residential Tenancies Act is for longer term rentals. We are only focused on anything 30 days or less. Can have management on site. It doesn't necessarily have to have management on site, but the bylaw does speak to having a designated responsible person who would always be in contact. And then, there was a bit of a mistake in the next line. So we do want to include bed and breakfast in the establishment, but it shall not include motels, hotels, tourist establishments, campgrounds, etc. So anything that's already on a waterfront commercial tourist or commercial tourist property, this is not what this bylaw is meant to license. Those are already taken care of by its own laws and regulations. This is strictly for properties within mostly residential area. So that's the explanation of the definition. And going on to the application for the zoning bylaw amendment, we are going to apply for wording that includes parking. So making sure that there's appropriate parking in place to avoid people parking on streets or parking over neighbors' lots or on grass in an unsightly way. And making sure that they're of the correct size. Listing structures that would not be allowed to be short-term rentals, for example, garden suites, which are defined as a different type of use, or travel trailers. And then to include a list of zones where short-term rentals are permitted. The list you see there is where bed and breakfasts are already permitted. So the idea was to reflect the same thing in short-term rentals. So that's the zoning bylaw portion that we're asking for council support to apply with the planning board to begin the process of changing the zoning bylaw. And then going into the draft short-term rental licensing bylaw. I reviewed our meeting from April 5th to make sure that we tried to cover all of the issues that were brought up at that meeting. So we did include the overall numbers of STRs with a limit of 50, limited the number of licenses per property to 1. There's language in the draft bylaw in a few different places that speak to limiting the occupancy on the property to septic capacity. So even more restrictive than that number of bedrooms. Number of bedrooms is not the only portion to take into account. We should also be looking at how many bathrooms, if they've added a washer, a dryer, making sure that it's also supportive of the fixtures that are on the property. And also checking to make sure that the number of bedrooms in the structure were put in legally and are therefore supported by the septic. So using the septic capacity to limit occupancy is an important part of the bylaw. The number of structures to be used on the short-term rental, we discussed that at last meeting. Again, it speaks to what's legally allowed to be on the property. If it's legally allowed to be there, then the definition that we're proposing can encapsulate a lot of different types of occupancies, but again, coming back to what a septic system would be able to support. We have language that protects the environment and the safety of renters, where we speak to the number of inspections that'll be required from fire, bylaw, and building to make sure that these structures are safe to be rented. Again, the designated responsible person, someone who can be called by the renters and perhaps even neighbors or the municipality to speak to any issues that come up while someone's renting the property. And we'll be drafting an extensive licensee code of conduct and acknowledgement. That'll be finished after the draft bylaw has had more comment from the public and from council. So there is a document where everything is lined out or outlined for the licensee so they know exactly what the expectations are before starting to rent the property. The education of renters, the draft bylaw speaks to a renter's code of conduct. Again, a document that's provided to the renters that says this is how the municipality expects you to act while you're in our municipality. The fact that there should be information available to them, including their address, access to emergency services, how many people are allowed on the property, making all of that really clear to the renters so that it aids them in following the rules. We did include an area for listing sensitive areas. If council ever deems an area to be sensitive, we wanted to include that schedule so that it could be kept top of mind if that information ever comes forward. And there's an example of a demerit or strike system that not only do we have our fines for enforcement, so we have our AMP system, we have provincial offenses, we have orders that can be written, but if these orders or tickets are written and they stand, either they go through an appeal process and are still standing at the end, that there can be points marked against a particular property or properties so that we can suspend or revoke permits if we have issues with particular owners. We included the fees as discussed at the last meeting. And also wrote in some information, staff included information about water access only properties to make sure that owners of those such properties know that they have to provide transportation. We do this in the building department already. It's expected that within our building and construction bylaw, if it's a water access only property, we are brought to the property at the cost of the owner. So, oh, and also that bread and breakfast establishments, we did want to include them in the bylaw as well for the licensing portion. So we are making some recommendations this evening that council support us in moving forward with the application for the zoning bylaw based on what we've reported on what we're looking to change in the zoning bylaw. That we discuss and review this draft bylaw, and also that we bring it to be able to post it for the public to be able to communicate back to us what they think. So that's the report, and I'd like to open it up to council for questions at this time.
Hey, Councillor Bob.
Thank you very much. I have a comment or maybe a little concern on the demerit point. You state in there that 2 years before they fall off. What if someone gets not enough parking? And there's 2 or 3 demerit points for that. I forget now. But what if he fixes the problem and that is gone within 2 months? Why should, if he fixes the problem, I just think maybe those demerit points should be given back to him. It's just a thought, and maybe there's something I'm not seeing.
Through you, Madam Chair. I'll just hop in here a little bit. Just like everything else we do in the bylaw department, everybody is given fair notice. There's usually 2 notices posted to the property owner or any issue we're having before any action is really taken to a point of ticketing or anything. So at that point, they would have already received 2 letters or 2 visits from the department to try to rectify the situation. So at that point, I feel that's a fair assessment to get a couple demerit points because we have already reached out. We always try to give everybody the benefit of the doubt and be as fair as possible here with all our bylaws in the municipality.
If I may, Matt, that's fine, and I understand your reasoning, and I accept it. I just didn't see it that way, and pretty much I accept your recommendations moving forward. That what you're asking us to do and support. Thank you.
Anybody else have any questions? Mayor Pajot?
I thought the bylaw was well written. I appreciated the amount of work that it went in there. There are sections in there that I thought were really outstanding and will resolve solutions between residents and those that have short-term rentals. And I think that's a good thing. I just had a question. And maybe I don't understand it. It's on page 15 of our package or page 7 of the bylaw. It says under 6.3D, it says prove the applicant is the owner of the property that the STR is operating on or grant permission in writing from an agent to apply on their behalf. So the owner, so an agent can do it on behalf, not the actual owner. And who would be an agent? Like, I didn't get that part.
To you. Thanks for the question. This is similar to how we would operate in the building department. So in a building sense, it would maybe be a contractor applying on behalf of an owner who maybe doesn't live within the municipality or manages the property. The same thing could happen at a short-term rental if it were a manager of the property as opposed to the actual owner. They would have to, in writing, state that they give permission to that agent to act on their behalf.
Okay, so the property owner, who is the real applicant, would give permission to the agent to speak on their behalf? or apply on their behalf? Am I reading that correctly?
Yes.
Okay, okay. I wasn't too sure on what it was. Madam Chair, can I continue with my questions? Okay. Hang on, I just have to read my notes.
Mhm.
Okay, so on page 10 of the bylaw, where you talk about license validity, expiry, suspension, and revocation. Oh, I wrote, okay, oh, I think I got it. If taxes are in arrears, then we're not giving out licenses, right? So any arrearage, no licenses will be granted, right?
Right. The intention is any tax in arrears, any fines that are in arrears, that would mean a revocation of a license.
Okay. Now, I want to move to the demerit points. And in the list of their, so if there's interference with, there's nothing that talks about interference with officers, so whether they're bylaw officers are OPP officers or public health officers. It doesn't fall under table 1. Unless I missed it. And in my opinion, if there's any interference or our officers are put in a position where you know, they're not able to conduct do their jobs, then I think an immediate revocation of their license should occur. And it's not addressed here as well. And also in here, it doesn't address like violation of fire bans. So, and again, I would say it has to be very severe because of the danger that people, as we know, it's very, very dry out there, and anybody starting a little bonfire, it wouldn't take very long to do something about that. And that would include fireworks because they're part of our ban. And then, oh, sorry.
That question is in the first
Is it?
demerit point, Fire Protection and Prevention Act Fire Code, and the reference is open burning bylaw. That's where your fire bans fall.
Okay, well, then I think 3 is way too low. Way, way too low for that. Our fire bans have to be taken extremely serious. So if that's captured in there, what about the interference with the officers? That would be different, right? Under 7? Where's 7? Oh, it's there.
The fire code prevention is a 7 demerit point for making.
Yeah, that's right.
Maybe I'll explain a little bit more the chart because I've stared at it. So, so if you know, there's almost 2 layers or 2 levels of demerit points for almost every issue that may come up. So if we look at the first 2, you'll see Fire Protection and Prevention Act /Fire Code. Any order written under the Fire Protection and Prevention Act or open burning bylaw. So an order, we consider something that would have some time to comply. Something that, you know, if something were brought up and it wasn't an immediate issue, but something that we didn't gain compliance right away, we may write an order, maybe not necessarily anything can think of at the moment under open burning or bylaw, but an order would be considered a lower level issue.
Yeah, so let's say if they start their fire at 7 o'clock instead of 8 o'clock at night.
Perhaps. Where if you look at the next line, it's still the Fire Protection and Prevention Act or open burning bylaw, but we're looking at a provincial offenses notice, a Part 3 order, or an AMP has been written.
Right.
Those would be something of a more immediate nature, like burning during a fire ban or something like that.
Okay.
Where they would actually get 7 demerit points instead of 3. And there's nothing holding our officers to, you must first issue an order, then go to the next
Right.
level. If it's a serious enough offense, then that 7 demerit points would be
Would
what
come
they would
off.
be awarded if that charge stood.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So you'll notice
Yep,
there's a
I
lot
got
of,
it. Got it.
so there's And then we have a level that, like, a level of points where we would reach a suspension
Okay.
level, potentially within 6 months if we scored, I think, 7 points. If I look at what we had
Yeah.
to say. And then if within that 2 years they reached 15 points, we may revoke the license.
Right.
I will agree. There's nothing in here at the moment for the interference of the officer. And to be clear, so any enforcement issue that happens on any of these properties, those would be orders that they'd have to follow with particular issues for them to fulfill the order. There would be different fines and fees associated with provincial offenses or with AMPS. This demerit point system is in addition to all of those enforcement tools. So there might be multiple offenses on the property with multiple tickets written. Once those are confirmed after going through their either appeal process or they're paid or they're put on their taxes, that's when we would add up the demerit point system. Does that make sense?
So.
Right. So if that's clear, the fine would be written or the AMPS would be written or whatever was appropriate at the
Right.
time. And then the demerit points would be on top of that. It would not be like each ticket that we write has it. They would all be applied to the demerit point system after they're written and then paid or settled after appeal.
Okay. So for instance, I'll give you an example.
Mhm.
The noise bylaw, okay? And as we know, I mean, there's no secret here. We're getting a lot of complaints with regards to noise. So what would happen would be if there is a noise complaint that comes in, then you confirm the order. So a bylaw officer would go and check it out, then would issue an order. And then that's great. If subsequently it continues the following weekend, then it would move up from a 3 to a 5. Am I understanding that correctly?
Through you, Madam Chair, just, it really depends on the officer and what the issue is. It's all circumstantial. Depends on what is going on.
Okay,
It's just like everything else and enforcing it, it really just depends on the situation at hand, so. But it's, the order is just, again, it's just a lighter tap instead of.
right.
you know,
Yeah,
We're looking for compliance instead of,
correct.
that's kind of the goal of our department always is compliance over fines, so.
I agree. I mean, we don't have to be going to the same property over and over again. And so if somebody learns from it, that's great. And then we don't have to worry about all the neighbors calling us after that.
And to speak to the 2-year portion of keeping the points on, it really does threaten the licensee with it puts it in the licensee's hands to make sure that their renters are following the rules. Because at the end of the day, they have to make sure that they're renting to people who will respect the area. It puts the onus on the licensee, the person who's making the money on the
Yes.
property. We want to put as much pressure on that licensee as any other business owner to be responsible for who they're bringing into the municipality. So I think that speaks to supporting keeping the demerit points on the property for that 2-year portion, so that there is that threat that, well, I'm sorry, if you can't bring people into our municipality who are respecting the rules, then you cannot operate. And
Right.
we only have this many licenses. So if we've already hit our 50, well, then I'm sorry, you'll have to wait until the next license is available. So we have the tools to say, you keep bringing in problems.
Right.
We don't want them.
Right. And just another comment, I thought under on page 5, I like the idea of having the owner, the agent of the STR maintain a minimum of $2 million in commercial general liability insurance per occasion. So I think that's really important, especially if something goes really, really wrong and the licensed person needs to, there's damage to the environment or something like that. At least we know that there's some insurance that they can count on to remediate whatever the problem is. And aside from that, those were all my comments, and thank you very, very much.
I believe Councillor Dave had a question.
Thank you through you, Madam Chair. Just a question about I know like it says no travel trailers for Airbnbs. But what if somebody with the new travel trailer bylaw being passed had a legal trailer with a license for a year, like yearly license? Would that not be acceptable? Or no?
The travel trailer licensing bylaw clearly states that you cannot use the trailer for commercial purposes. We're covered there.
Okay.
Yep.
Yeah, thank you.
So I have Councillor Roger, go ahead.
Yeah, just a comment on the interference of our bylaw officers or firefighters or whatever. Whether it's verbal or physical. My point of view, it should go from basically 0 to 100 right away. No dealings or second chance or whatever. I mean, we have to protect our officers and just my thought anyway, what I believe in is just nail them to the boards right away. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, so I just wanna, so the fine is given to the owner, but if the person that's renting does a fire when they're not supposed to, do they get a fine and the owner or just the owner? Like, because technically the person shouldn't be doing the fire, right? So they should get one. Go ahead, Kevin.
Through you, Madam Chair. Yeah, this really depends on how nice you are when we get there. So, no, but the individuals that are renting are subject to the bylaw, so they can be ticketed with part ones under the provincial offenses notices, but if the property owner would still receive a ticket as well under our amps, so.
Okay,
We will still get the renters if we show up on scene, so.
okay. Just because we know that, even though you may say no, often people don't. Campers, or even locals, not just campers, but, go ahead, Andrea.
And we take that into account in almost every bylaw that we write, thinking that you are either permitting this to happen or you're allowing it to happen. So as the owner, it's considered that you've permitted this to happen. You've invited people to your property, they've lit a fire. If you're allowing it to happen, you're there and you've set the fire. So we've written our short form offenses and amps to take into the account the fact that there's responsibility for the owner as well as the person there.
Okay. And I agree that, no tolerance should be taken into consideration. I do agree to that, but we all know that sometimes you rent to the nicest person and something may happen, and I don't think that the owner should be penalized forever because they rented to one bad person. So I agree with the point system of at least if they get nailed once, then they have time to redeem themselves. As far as bylaw, I don't agree that they should be abusing our bylaw or police officers or any kind of programs that we do have here, but we do know that it can happen. It does happen. But it doesn't mean that because you make a bad decision in renting to one person, doesn't mean that that should affect you for, your whole entire 2 years or longer, or, just my opinion on that one. So I like the point system because at least, you know, if they do get, you know, one fine, then they know to really watch and not get past the 15 points, like you said. And so that's my opinion on that one. Go ahead, Andrea.
This brings up a good point. So all of our orders, AMPS, provincial offenses notices, they all have an appeal process. So if something comes up that someone has a legitimate issue or they want to be heard for why it shouldn't be the way it is, there's appeal processes at every level. Once the appeal process is over, that's when we address or grant the demerit point. So if they've had their fair say, they've gone through everything we've set up to allow for them to speak their mind and state their case. Once we've hit the confirmed order or confirmed fine, that's when we're going to get it. So there are ways to build in this discussion and defense of different actions. Also, there's words like may instead of must. So they're even within the number of points for suspension and revocation. We may suspend, we may revoke, because there are certain situations that could come up that we can't predict as enforcement officers, where we just haven't planned correctly for a particular situation and we feel like it doesn't merit revoking for whatever reason. There's places to have those discussions.
Thank you. Councillor Dave.
Thank you, through you, Madam Chair. Just, I think for a short-term rental owner, it would be good to maybe put in their agreement that if any of these are cause them to have a fine to the owner, that they would be charged for it to the owner. So like if you have an Airbnb and you get a $500 fine, it would be added on to their bill. That's how I would put it if I had it. Like as an owner, not anything to do with this, but that's how I would deal with that. Doesn't help for the points, but it'll help them comply.
And just another way to put that onus on the person who's most who's getting the most benefit from having the license.
All in all, I like the idea of the demerit, the way that you've set up the demerit points. First, you start off with the education part so that, you know, if something goes wrong and there's a problem, it doesn't automatically go to a large number of demerit points. There's an appeal system available so that the owner can state their case. And at the end of the day, if it turns out that the points, the demerit points are confirmed and you've got up to 15. And if you get up to close to 15, then there's a serious problem with that particular Airbnb. And so the idea to me is that, yeah, you may get dinged, you know, once or twice as we get through this learning process. But if we're seeing, if bylaw is seeing a lot of people just not complying with our bylaws and making life miserable for the residents that surround them, then I think that needs to be addressed. And that's the purpose of this bylaw. So it's education, basically warning, and then appeals, and then the demerit points. And so I don't think we can be any fairer than that unless somebody comes up with something different. But it gives a chance for everybody to you know, take care of, you know, rent their properties and make sure that whoever they rent them to abides by the rules, and that the owner's responsibility to make sure that the renters follow the rules at the end of the day. So.
Okay. So we have a resolution to direct staff to apply for a zoning bylaw amendment to allow and regulate the use of short-term rentals. I need a mover and a seconder. Councillor Dave and Councillor Roger.
It is duly moved and seconded. Be it resolved that council directs staff to proceed with an application for a zoning bylaw amendment in relation to licensing and regulating short-term rentals in certain zones as presented in a report dated July 5th, 2023. So this will allow staff to start the process of applying for the application. And then that process will come back to council and for public consultation. So there's going to be public consultation on the licensing bylaw itself, but first on the licensing and second, kind of at the same time for the zoning bylaw amendment.
So are we all in favor? Counselor Dean, you have a question?
Before we advance with this, I was just wondering if we've had consultation with our neighboring municipalities on this bylaw, and if they're interested in the same bylaw, or have they expressed an interest in changes to this bylaw, and I'm wondering, I'm hoping that we get everybody sort of on side with the same rules in our adjoining municipalities, and I just wondered what the status of that is.
Thank you. So obviously we have close ties with Killarney and St. Charles, who have also been asking for this type of bylaw, and we're presenting that. I'm presenting that this month to the next two municipalities. A lot of research was done, which included research that came from the municipality of West Nipissing. They had a push for a similar type of bylaw before election. So I think their bylaw is well researched, but they haven't passed one yet. But we've taken a lot from the research that they brought forward. A lot of municipalities have passed similar bylaws. So when we did research this as a staff, a lot of those different bylaws were taken into account and reviewed. So everyone who has any type of short-term rental in their municipality is pressing forward with this type of legislation, with differences for licensing fees and that sort of thing. But this is a local solution that we feel will work for us. And I'm glad you asked the question, because I just want to say there was so much review by our staff, and it was really, I think that we did put a lot of good work into this. I just want to make sure no one thinks that this is something that I wrote on my own, because this was definitely a team effort to bring this forward. So I hope that answers your question.
And one more question that I have is, I noticed that we've got a plan to put it in our website and so forth, and we're going to try to get this out to the public for their viewing as much as possible. And I think that's important that we do that. But I just wonder, how do we expect to hear from people who are interested in this subject, or who are presently renting on a short-term basis, or are planning to do so? How do we hear from them? Are we looking for a delegation from people, from the people in the community, or are we just expecting letters from people, or are we giving an opportunity to speak to council on this issue? I'd like to hear what the details are on that.
Through you, Madam Chair. So to answer your question, Dean, so following this meeting, we will launch. So the next resolution is to direct staff to for us to launch the consultation period. So probably by next week, we will have a notice out to the public, social media in our next. So our next newsletter comes out at the end of June, along with our tax bills. So the call for consultation will be sent out to every property owner. So the consultation will be similar to what we did with travel trailers. The feedback and comments are going to be requested in writing, either by email, any written form. And those comments and feedback, inquiries, questions will be pooled and brought back to council. We're looking for probably September. So the consultation period will be at least 30 days, probably until like middle of August. So, and if during that time, if there's any groups, citizens or short-term rental property owners that want to bring a delegation to council, they are most welcome to. But through the consultation, we're hoping that everything is going to be in writing. So council has something to consider. Yes. And then also through the zoning bylaw amendment, similar to what we did with travel trailer, that is another public hearing. That is for the zoning, similar to what we're doing following this meeting. So the zoning is going to be a general amendment. So all the property owners, so that's what we're going to give notice also in the newsletter about the general amendment to the zoning bylaw. So everyone is going to be notified twice, probably.
Okay, no other questions, so I guess,
The motion on the table is to direct staff to apply for this week.
it was moved by Dave and seconded by Roger. And all in favor? Okay. And the second resolution was to direct staff to launch a consultation period for review of the short-term rental bylaw. So I need a mover and a seconder for that, Counselor Bob and Counselor Dean.
So duly moved and seconded, be it resolved that council directs staff to launch a consultation period for review of the draft short-term rental bylaw as presented and reviewed on July 5th.
All in favor? Okay. Number 7, correspondence, there's none. I need a mover and a seconder to adopt for the resolution of the consent agenda. Counselor Dave and Counselor Dean.
So duly moved and seconded, be resolved that council approves the items of the consent agenda under section 8.1 and receives the items under section 8.2.
All in favor? Good. We have no items separated from the consent agenda. No notices of motion. We have announcements and inquiries. So I'm not sure, we're gonna start with Roger.
First of all, July 1st. I wasn't there, couldn't make it, but I heard it was a success. Even though it had to be moved due to weather situation. And I have to congratulate you, Councillor Renee, for doing an excellent job putting it together. Like I said, it was beautiful. Thank you.
So this one was Curly that put it together, so we have to thank her. I didn't have much to do with it, so.
Number 2. ACC. The Alvin Community Center. The progress going very slow, as far as I'm concerned. So, and what I wanted to do maybe is pass a motion that once a month, prior to our mid-month meeting, council goes for a tour. Whether you call it a progress tour or just to find out what's going on. But it would have to be done as council. I say 2 or 3 days prior to our meeting, so then we are all aware of what's going on. Because I've asked the question a few times and I was told basically COVID. Well, I'm sorry, but the age of COVID is dead. It's gone, it's bye. So we have to look at the contractors now and get the information and see what's happening.
Okay, so I think Roger, that is operational. It's not really council's job. So I believe that maybe speaking to Mark or I guess that would be, who would be in charge of that now? That Bob is retired and they could advance that it's their job to deal with the contractors and that, right?
No, I realize it's operational, but it would be good for the council to see what's happening. And then for us not to talk to the contractors, I realize that's not our job, but to talk to Bob, for example, and see what's happening.
I'll let Mark speak to that maybe.
So the request for tender went out this early January, was given out. Progress started this spring. There was an anticipated conclusion late fall into December. We did run into minor hiccups here and there. There was a site meeting held last Thursday, which I will get a brief on to see where things are at. But we're still gearing towards the end of this fall into December as a completion date. And I can certainly provide council with an update in the next week or so of where things are at. To answer your question about a site visit, it's a construction site. So there are implications with that as well. But certainly as things progress, I will look and talk to the architect, contractors and our manager to see if there's an opportunity in the upcoming weeks.
Thank you. And did I have a whole list tonight? Being the coordinator of the food bank, I would like to thank for the food that we received from basically what was left over July 1st. All the hot dogs and hamburgers. I think it'll make us or make the recipients very happy to receive what we received from the benefits of July 1st. So again, thank you for that, the council. And I think I'm going to cut it for short. Let somebody else talk. Thank you.
Thank you, Roger. Counselor Bob?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'm just going to repeat a few of the things. But starting off this morning, I came to work early and I went down Montegere on Wesley Bay Road through town. You can see today being our second full pickup of recycling, more blue and blue every time. I put it, well, I make up my mind. I have my idea that our recycling bins are closed at our transfer site, so more people are using the bins, and it was nice to see. Canada Day, Monsieur Gagnon, I would extend and I would like you to pass it along. Thank you for staff for Canada Day, and because of the weather, we had to change and staff scrambled, and it came out great. Especially a big thank you to the cooks.
Thank you, Bob.
And if possible, and it just I had it down here, and then I saw on Roger's note he had it down also. Would it be possible at our next meeting that we get an update on the OPP? I don't want to put you on the spot.
No, you're not putting me on the spot. We're still waiting for the facility teams to come and do the assessment of the current location, and then come here and see of the possibility of building a new OPP station. We haven't heard from them yet. Yeah, but it is scheduled for this month. So maybe I'll wait next week and speak to the superintendent and see where they're at with that. But they told us it'd be the end of June, beginning of July. So what date are we? 5th. We're still at the beginning of July. So if I'm going to push, I want to push on stuff more than a date.
Okay, and that's it. Thank you.
Thank you. Counselor Dean?
Just be repetitive and say that Canada Day celebrations, as far as the hamburgers and hot dogs are concerned, seem to be a marvelous success. And the cooks were just excellent there to carry out that job. They were the lineup never got too long. They were producing this product pretty rapidly, and I guess that not much more complimentary can be said on that. Going back to the recycling, it's kind of interesting that when the truck came in, and I was just happened to be out in front of my garage when the truck came in today. And so he got out of the truck and he was dumping it. And I found it kind of interesting that they don't have a 2-man job on this truck. It's the driver has to get out and empty the bins in the truck, et cetera, et cetera. And I thought to myself, that's not efficient. I mean, it shouldn't have to be doing it that way because it's taking longer. And I noticed that the truck was on 64 coming this way, and some of the bins had not been picked up back our way, so I don't know whether they're going back again or whether is there two trucks? Is there two trucks? So maybe another truck is. Yeah, and maybe short staffed too, as you said. But I was talking to the guy for a moment and he said, by the way, my name is Frank. I said, well, I'm glad to know you, Frank. And they seemed real friendly and was enthusiastic about what he was doing. He says he leaves North Bay at 6 a.m. and on this long route. It is a long day, wouldn't it? But it's nice to see it progressing, and I think everybody is appreciative. And boy, I'm just amazed at the amount of stuff in those bins that are there for 2 weeks. And I don't know where people get so much stuff to put in them. But and some of them have got 3 bins out in front. How do they get 3 bins anyway? Are they buying their own? In any event, leaving that to aside, but I don't have anything really further to add to our conversation. I can tell you that the water has just about reached summertime low in Dry Pine Bay. So I don't think it's going to get much lower. They seem to be, the lake is on the low side too, though. And so it's been kind of on the dry side. If we get more rain, it would help things. But yeah, I've said enough.
Counselor Dave.
I guess I'm gonna sound like a broken record. Yeah, Canada Day was fun. It was good. It was nice to work with everybody all together at the barbecue area. Same thing I noticed with the blue bins also on my way back from Sudbury tonight, the south side of the 64 wasn't picked up yet. So I don't know if
They were working on that.
they're still working on it. Okay. Yeah, because I didn't see it on the way back.
I came in, they were doing it.
Okay. But yeah, I saw a lot of bins from my place out to Albin, and it's nice to see. And by the way, I have 5 bins.
Did you steal some or did you buy
No.
some?
I had a contract to demolish a house, and
Oh.
he said I can have everything that was there. There was 3 bins. Yeah, that's it, I guess.
That's it.
Yep.
Okay. Mayor Pajot.
I echo everybody's statement with regards to Canada Day, and so I'm not going to do that. Except to thank the recreation staff that hauled all the extra buns and hot dogs and hamburgers to the food bank today. So on a very, very hot day in a non-air conditioned food bank. So it was pretty hot in there. Just one announcement for me, just to let council know and the public know that TFO has come to our municipality the last couple of days. They are doing a special on small northern communities that have a high Francophone population. And unfortunately, they couldn't interview everybody that they wanted to, but they did interview a family that had moved from a large city to here, and why did they settle here in our Francophone community, and why select French River. So that went very well. They also wanted to interview one business, and since Chaptanaille Lumber was celebrating its 100th anniversary last week, I thought that would be a perfect one to mention because it's historical as well. They also interviewed Laurent Quenel and André with regards to our trails in the back here and the role of the VEA and what they do in our community. They were at our beach, and they wanted to do the art gallery, but they were having a hard time connecting with the director. But I did give them information about the mural, so they went and shot some footage at Joe Chaptanaille Park, which I told them what was happening there. So they were able to do both at the same time. So they're hoping to, the ones that they missed, they may just call them separately and do separate interviews over Zoom. But it was it's pretty detailed. It'll take about another 3 or 4 months before they finish the production of it. And so I asked her to send us a copy of it so that we can put it on our website. So I thought it was pretty cool for our community.
Good.
That's it for me.
That's it for you. So I think that's pretty exciting. So I guess the park is, they're in the middle of installing the children's park at Joe Chartrand. So in the next few weeks, that should be all up and done. So that will be a nice addition to Joe Chartrand Park and for the kids in the area of Noelville. For them to have a place to go and play and families to sit and enjoy a picnic, and so that'll be good. Again, thanks to all the volunteers that did lots of work out there to get it to this point. Between that and staff, I think it's come a long way. So thank you. Canada Day, went well. Thanks for all you cooks that battled the sweat because it was a very hot afternoon out there. Everybody knows how hot it was, so that was really good. I think if you were inside the arena, it was a little cooler than outside, but it went really well. And to the firemen for the dunk tank and that, people enjoyed that, so that was good. Not sure, do we have another meeting in July? Do we meet in 2 weeks? No way. So we're not gonna see, when's the next meeting? August 16th. So there's going to be a lot of activities going on in the area between now and August 16th. Right now, there's free fishing week this week up till the weekend, so enjoy that. There'll be the long weekend coming along. There's a few golf tournaments before that. There's the annual family baseball tournament happening the weekend of 11th, 12th, I believe, somewhere around that time. So I guess by the time we meet, they're going to be starting putting the ice back on. So it's not nice to say that, but the ice does go on after the ball tournament. So that's around the 15th or so. Have a good summer. I don't know if any of you have anything to comment or want to ask or speak, or our visitors out there. We do have a mic there if you have any questions or comments for us. Now's your time. No? Yeah, if you want to just get up and go to the mic, and there's a little button in the middle you can press.
Hopefully everyone can hear me okay. Just wanted to introduce myself. My name is Tim Peters. I live on Dry Pine Bay, and just wanted to thank staff and council for being so collaborative as it comes to short-term rentals. Myself and 5 or 6 other folks we've met with are what I think of as homeowners and members of the community. And so I just want to thank folks for being so collaborative. I think the approach we're taking in terms of making sure we have rules that are fair for everyone to, make sure that our community continues to thrive is a great approach. And I just wanted to put a name, a face to the name and thank everyone. And it's just great to also be here to see this sort of, community in action. So thank you also for just your general service. This has got to be a lot of work. And so just wanted to thank everyone for that as well. Thank you for your service.
Thank you very much. Thanks for coming out. Anybody else or no? Okay. Oh, Councillor Roger.
Yeah, going back to July 1st, one group we forgot to mention for their help was the Lions Club.
Lions. Yes, thank you to the
Right.
Lions.
And I saw the pictures on Facebook. It was greatly appreciated. The numbers were good. So again, thank you, Lions Club.
So we're gonna wish everybody a good summer and hope that the bylaw officers aren't too busy. No more meetings till August 16th, yes. We're on holidays for a month. Well, we're from meetings, this meeting anyways, not from all the other meetings or from the phone calls and letters and everything else, but from this meeting itself. So we look forward to, I guess, staff will have a lot of work putting the notices out for the short-term rentals. And that's about it. So we need we have a resolution to adjourn. We already did the confirmation bylaw. Okay, so I need Councillor Dave, Councillor Dean.
Duly moved and seconded to be resolved that bylaw 2023-43 being a bylaw to confirm the proceeding of council at a meeting held on July 5th be read a first, second, and third time and finally passed.
All in favor? Good. And we have a resolution to adjourn. So I need a mover and a seconder for that. Counselor Roger, and Counselor Bob. All in favor? So we're gonna sign off and then sign back in at 7:30.